If you're so smart, then pay your own bills. My mother's voice cut through the apartment like shattered glass. Sharp, cold, final. I was still standing in the doorway. Gray stains on my work shirt, my legs burning from a double shift I hadn't volunteered for but couldn't refuse. My shoes were barely off when she shoved a stack of envelopes into my chest. Overdue notices, red ink, bold warnings screaming female non-ace like accusations. She didn't ask how my day went. She didn't ask if I'd eaten. She didn't even look tired for me. She just looked angry, like my existence itself had become an unpaid debt. I already paid the last two, I said quietly, staring down at the numbers I knew by heart. Rent, electricity, internet, groceries. Things no 23-year-old should be carrying alone, she scoffed, folding her arms. Then pay the rest. If you're so educated, so independent, so grown. She leaned closer, her voice dropping into that familiar venomous whisper. Prove it. Pay your own bills. Something inside me broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly. Like a final thread snapping after being pulled for years. For a long time, I'd mistaken survival for loyalty. My name is Maya, I'm 23 years old, and that was the night I stopped being my mother's safety net and became my own person. I didn't yell back, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I walked past her, down the narrow hallway of an apartment that had never really felt like home. My room was small, just a bed, a desk, and dreams that kept getting postponed, but it was the only space that had ever belonged to me. My hands shook as I grabbed my backpack, clothes, my laptop, my documents, and one framed photo. Me and my dad, smiling before he left, and took more than just himself with him. She followed me, heels clicking sharply against the floor. Where do you think you're going? I zipped the bag and finally looked at her. You told me to pay my own bills, I said calmly. So I'm gonna live my own life. Her mouth opened, probably ready to throw guilt, fear, or rage at me. But I didn't stay long enough to hear it. I walked out that door and didn't look back. That night, I slept on my best friend Nora's couch. The room was dark except for the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't slow down. You finally left, Nora whispered from the armchair. You should have done it years ago. I know, I said, staring at my phone. I expected missed calls, threats, manipulation. Silence screamed louder than any message. But everything's still in my name, I added. The lease, the power. The internet, if she stops paying, they'll come after me. Nora frowned. Can't you just take your name off? That question hit me harder than my mother's yelling ever had. For years, I'd been cleaning up messes that weren't mine, paying debts I didn't create, protecting someone who never protected me. I'd convinced myself it was love. But what if I stopped? A few days later, I went back to the apartment while my mom was out, just to grab the rest of my things. That's when I saw it, a thick envelope on the kitchen table, with my name on it. Not hers, mine. My stomach dropped. Final notice. I opened it with shaking hands. It wasn't just the electric bill. It was a credit card I had never opened. Thousands of dollars in charges I didn't recognize. Late fees stacked on top of lies. The apartment felt smaller, suffocating. I found more letters, more statements. Different companies, same name. Mine. I wasn't just supporting a struggling parent. I was being robbed. I rushed back to Nora's place, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. We spread the letters across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. She opened credit cards in your name. Nora whispered. Maya, this is identity theft. She's my mom, I said weakly. But the words didn't protect her anymore. Memories rushed back. Just sign here. I'll handle it. Don't you trust me? I had trusted her, because she was supposed to be safe. That night, while Nora slept, I sat alone with my laptop and pulled my credit report for the first time. Every line felt like a punch. Utilities, cards, all mine on paper, none of them mine in choice. That's when revenge stopped being an emotion and became a decision. I documented everything, screenshots, statements, voicemails, text messages full of guilt and demands. It felt wrong, like betrayal. Then I remembered her face when she shoved those bills into my hands. If you're so smart, then pay your own bills. Fine. The next morning, I opened a new bank account, changed my direct deposit, called every utility company and removed my name. When the woman on the phone warned me the power would be shut off if the remaining account holder didn't pay, I didn't hesitate. "I understand," I said. "I won't be making any more payments." For the first time in my life, I wasn't fixing a problem. I was letting consequences do their job, and I knew. When the lights went out, she would call. This was only the beginning. To understand how I let it go on for so long, you have to understand the house I grew up in. Not the apartment itself, but the emotional architecture of it. It was built on guilt. Long before the bills, long before the shouting, there was my father's empty side of the bed. When he left, he didn't slam doors or scream goodbye. He just disappeared. One day his toothbrush was gone, his jacket's missing from the closet, and the air felt heavier. I was 14. Old enough to notice the silence. Too young to understand what it would turn into. My mother, Evelyn, used to laugh before that. She sang while cooking. She called me baby and kissed my forehead before school. After he left, grief settled into her bones. And then it hardened. Every problem became personal. Every struggle needed a culprit. Bills piled up like accusations on the kitchen counter. The refrigerator hummed louder than usual. The lights flickered like they were unsure whether to stay. And somehow, even then, the weight of it all shifted toward me. "He ruined us," she'd say, staring at the wall, "and now it's just you and me." At first, that sounded like love. Then it started sounding like a contract. When I got my first part-time job at 16, she hugged me too tightly. "We're a team now," she said. "You're so mature for your age." I didn't realize team meant surrendering my paycheck. She took my debit card for safekeeping, paid the rent, bought cigarettes, wine, groceries, things we needed, and things she wanted. When I asked questions, her eyes hardened. "Do you want us on the street?" "Your father didn't care about us." At least I stayed. Every sentence came with invisible handcuffs. By the time I started college, the lines were already blurred. My scholarships weren't mine, they were ours. My student loans weren't an investment in my future. They were survival funds for the present. Evelyn stopped looking for steady work. Why would she when I was always there to soften the fall? If I hesitated before sending money, she'd explode. "You think you're better than me because you're educated. So now you're too good to help your own mother." My achievements turned into insults. My boundaries turned into betrayals. I worked late, studied later, slept less. Every month felt like another fire to put out. Rent one week, utilities the next. An emergency that always somehow came right after I got paid. Whenever I tried to say no, she rewrote the story. "After everything I've done for you, I sacrificed my whole life. You owe me." And I believed her. Because guilt is powerful when it's dressed up as love. I didn't see it as abuse. I saw it as responsibility. But responsibility doesn't feel like fear every time your phone vibrates. It doesn't make you flinch when someone says your name too sharply. It doesn't turn a child into a parent and call it loyalty. I remember nights lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, doing mental math over and over. If I skip groceries, I can cover the power. If I work an extra shift, maybe she won't be angry this week. She noticed the stress and used it. "You're strong," she'd say when it benefited her. "You're selfish," when it didn't. Money wasn't just money in our house. It was leverage, control, proof of devotion. If I paid, I was a good daughter. If I questioned it, I was ungrateful. The scariest part wasn't the yelling. It was how normal it became. I learned to ignore my own exhaustion. Learned to feel guilty for wanting a future that didn't include drowning. Learned to apologize for problems I didn't create. And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped asking where the money was going. I trusted her. Because she was my mother. That trust is what allowed her to cross the final line. Looking back, there were signs. Letters she brushed off as junk mail. Forms she asked me to sign without reading. Conversations she shut down with, "I'll handle it." I thought she meant handle the stress. What she really meant was handle my identity. The night she screamed, "Pay your own bills." It felt sudden, but it wasn't. It was the natural end of a system she'd built brick by brick, using my guilt as mortar. That apartment wasn't falling apart because of unpaid bills. It was collapsing because it was never built to support two people equally. One of us had been carrying the weight the entire time, and for the first time in my life, I was beginning to see it clearly. I didn't leave because I was heartless. I left because staying meant disappearing. The house built on guilt couldn't stand without me holding it up. So I let it crack. And once it started, there was no stopping what would come crashing down next. I told myself I was only going back for my things, just clothes, books, the small pieces of my life I hadn't been able to carry out in one backpack the night I left. I chose a weekday morning, a time I knew my mother wouldn't be home. I wasn't ready to face her yet, not after the silence, not after realizing how deep the damage might go. The apartment smelled the same, stale air, old coffee, a hint of cigarette smoke clinging to the curtains. It felt frozen in time, like nothing had changed except me. I moved quickly, not wanting to linger. Every room held memories that tugged at me. Arguments, late night studying, quiet apologies I'd whispered to no one. I filled a box with my books, folded clothes into a bag, unplugged my old lamp. That's when I saw it. An envelope on the kitchen table. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't torn open or tossed aside like the others. It sat neatly in the center, thick and heavy, as if it wanted to be seen. My name was printed across the front. Not hers, mine. My pulse spiked. I stared at it for a long moment, trying to convince myself it was a mistake. A school notice, a bank advertisement. Anything but the dread crawling up my spine. I picked it up. Final Noti was stamped across the top in bold red letters. My hands shook as I tore it open. It wasn't the power bill. It was a credit card statement. A card I had never applied for. Thousands of dollars charged to stores I'd never stepped into, restaurants I'd never eaten at, cash advances I'd never taken, late fees piled on top of interest like punishment. I sank into the chair, the paper crumpling in my grip. No, I whispered. No, no, no. My eyes darted around the apartment, suddenly seeing it differently. The television. The new kitchen gadgets. The packages that had arrived in my name when I'd been too busy to question them. I searched the counters. Then the drawer, then the pile of mail she always called junk. Another envelope, then another. Different companies. Different logos. Same name, mine. The air felt thick, like the walls were pressing in. My chest tightened as realization hit me in waves. Slow at first, then all at once. This wasn't desperation. This was theft. I gathered everything I could find, my heart pounding so loudly I thought I might pass out. Each envelope felt heavier than the last. Like evidence stacking up against someone I didn't want to see clearly. I left the apartment with the mail clutched to my chest and drove straight to Nora's place. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. We spread the envelopes across her coffee table. The room was quiet except for the sound of paper sliding and my uneven breathing. She opened credit cards in your name. Nora finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't even know they existed, I said. I swear. Nora flipped through the statements, her expression darkening. Maya, this is identity theft. The words landed like a verdict. She's my mom, I said automatically, but they sounded hollow even to me. Memories flooded back. All the times she'd waved off letters, all the forms she'd pushed toward me with a pen already uncapped. Just sign here. I'll handle it. Don't you trust me? I had trusted her. That night, after Nora fell asleep, I sat alone at her kitchen table with my laptop open and the letters spread around me like a warning circle. My hands hovered over the keyboard as I pulled my credit report for the first time. The screen loaded slowly. Then the damage appeared. Account after account. Utilities. Loans. Credit lines. All active. All delinquent. All under my name. I felt sick. Each entry told a story I hadn't consented to be part of. Money borrowed, spent, ignored. My credit score wasn't just low. It was buried. I thought about my future. Renting an apartment. Buying a car. Applying for jobs. All of it compromised before I'd even begun. And suddenly, the past made horrifying sense. The sudden emergencies. The constant shortages. The panic whenever I asked for clarity. She hadn't just been leaning on me. She'd been standing on me. I grabbed a notebook and started writing everything down. Account numbers, balances, dates, names. Every detail I could find. I screenshot messages where she guilted me into sending money. I saved voicemails of her yelling, demanding, accusing. Each one hurt, but they also strengthened something inside me. This wasn't betrayal on my part, it was protection. Still, guilt tried to claw its way back in. She must have been scared. She didn't know what else to do. She's your mother. Then I remembered the night she shoved those overdue notices into my hands. If you're so smart, then pay your own bills. I closed my laptop and stared at the wall, my mind racing. In that moment, something shifted. Revenge, to me, had always sounded dramatic, loud, cruel. But this wasn't about hurting her. This was about refusing to keep paying for her choices. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I didn't warn her. I started planning, carefully, quietly. Because the most powerful consequences don't come from anger. They come from truth and timing. And once I understood exactly what she had done, there was no turning back. I didn't confront her right away. Old instincts screamed at me to demand answers, to cry, to ask why. But another voice, quieter and steadier, told me something different. If I warned her, she'd hide the evidence. If I exploded, she'd twist the story. If I hesitated, I'd end up paying again. So instead, I got quiet, the kind of quiet that scares people who rely on chaos to stay in control. The next morning, Nora drove me to a free legal aid clinic tucked between a laundromat and a discount grocery store. I almost turned around twice. My chest felt tight, my hands damp. Sitting in a waiting room with peeling posters about tenant rights felt surreal. I wasn't filing paperwork. I was untangling my life from my mother's grip. The woman who met with me didn't interrupt as I explained. She read through my documents slowly, carefully. The envelopes. The statements. The notes I'd made at 3 a.m. When she finally looked up, her expression was calm but serious. Legally, she said. This is identity theft. Hearing it from a stranger made it real in a way nothing else had. You have options, she continued. You can dispute these accounts, place fraud alerts, remove yourself from shared utilities and leases. You can also file a report. You don't have to decide everything today, but you do need to protect yourself. Press charges, I asked, my voice barely steady. Against my own mother. She met my eyes. Against the person who stole your identity. Biology doesn't excuse criminal behavior. That sentence followed me out of the clinic. For years, my mom had hidden behind the word family like it was armor. She thought it made her untouchable. I was beginning to understand that it didn't. That afternoon, I opened a new bank account at a completely different bank. New login, new card, new password she would never know. I rerouted my direct deposit from work. The money that came in next week would finally land somewhere safe. Then I started making calls. Utilities first. Each one felt like pulling a thread from a knot that had been choking me for years. When I called the electric company, the representative confirmed what I already knew. Yes. Your name is listed as the primary account holder, she said. If you'd like to remove yourself, the remaining account holder will be fully responsible. And if the balance isn't paid, I asked. Service will be disconnected. I closed my eyes for a second. I'd like to remove my name, I said calmly. Effective immediately. She paused. I do need to inform you that once removed, you won't be able to make payments on this account. I understand, I replied. I won't be making any more payments. Click. One by one. I did the same with the internet, the phone plan, every service tied to that address. Each confirmation email felt like another inch of space between me and the life she'd wrapped around my throat. The lease was harder. My name was tied to it as a co-signer. Removing myself meant paperwork proof and landlord approval. I emailed, called, documented everything. I sent copies of my ID, my notice of withdrawal, my request in writing. I didn't ask for permission. I informed while I worked. My phone buzzed constantly, missed calls, texts, voicemails. Where are you? You can't ignore me forever. So now you think you're better than your own mother? I didn't respond. Silence was the loudest boundary I'd ever set. At night, guilt tried to crawl back in. I imagined her sitting in the dark, panicking, furious, afraid. Then I remembered every time I'd been afraid. Standing at the counter staring at red numbers, while she slept on the couch, television blaring. She had never worried about my fear. I placed fraud alerts on my credit, disputed accounts one by one, filed reports. Every form I submitted felt terrifying and empowering at the same time. I wasn't being cruel. I was being accurate. Nora watched me work from the doorway one evening. "How do you feel?" she asked. I thought about it. Scared, I admitted. But also like I'm not the one about to get burned anymore. That was the truth. I knew what would happen next. Bills don't disappear just because you ignore them. Power companies don't care about guilt. Creditors don't negotiate with manipulation. And this time, when the consequences came knocking, they wouldn't find my name on the door. This wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't revenge fueled by rage. It was revenge built on boundaries. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't warn her. I simply stepped out of the blast radius and let gravity do the rest. And somewhere deep down, I knew, when the lights finally went out, she would call. Because for the first time in her life, there would be no one left to fix it for her. About a month after I left, my life started to feel like it actually belonged to me. I picked up extra shifts at work, found a small room to rent so I wasn't living on Nora's couch anymore. It wasn't much, just a bed, a desk, and a window that let in the morning sun. But every inch of it was mine. More importantly, the damage to my credit had stopped spreading. Disputed accounts were under review. Fraud alerts were active. My credit score wasn't fixed yet, but it wasn't free falling either. For the first time in years, I could breathe without calculating how much oxygen cost. There was only one thing I hadn't done. I hadn't spoken to my mother. I saw her name light up my phone again and again. I read the messages without replying. "Where are you? You can't ignore me forever. So now you think you're too good for your own mother." Each one felt like a hook trying to reel me back in. Then, one evening, as I folded my work uniforms on my bed, my phone rang again. Her name flashed across the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I remembered the call I'd made to the electric company weeks earlier. The calm voice explaining policies. The warning I'd acknowledged. Curiosity won. I answered. "Maya!" she shouted the second the call connected. Her voice was high, panicked, raw. "What did you do? Why is the power off?" I could picture it perfectly. Her pacing the living room, phone clutched to her ear, the apartment swallowed by darkness. Food spoiling in the fridge. Silence where the TV usually blared. "The whole place is dark," she continued. "I can't see anything. My phone's dying. My food's going bad." I took a slow breath and kept my voice level. "Did you pay the electric bill?" "Don't start with me," she snapped. "You always handled that. They said the account holder removed herself, and there's a past due balance." "Why would you do that to me? Are you trying to ruin my life?" For a moment, the old guilt surged up, the reflex to apologize, to offer my card, to fix it before it got worse. Then I remembered the envelopes. The fraud. The way she'd screamed at me, shoving overdue notices into my hands. "I didn't do anything to you," I said slowly. "I just stopped paying for you." There was a sharp silence on the other end. "What is that supposed to mean?" she demanded. "It means the electricity account is in your name now," I explained. "If it doesn't get paid, they shut it off. That's how it works." "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "After everything I sacrificed for you, you're really going to abandon me in the dark." Something in her tone used to destroy me. This time it didn't. "You didn't sacrifice for me," I said, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "You sacrificed me." She sucked in a breath. "How dare you? You stole my money," I continued. "You opened credit cards in my name. You ruined my credit. You made me responsible for your life, then blamed me when it wasn't good enough." "That's not true," she screamed. "I'm your mother." "I have copies of everything," I replied quietly. "Statements. Signatures. I've started disputing the accounts." The line went dead silent. "Mia," she said finally, her voice suddenly smaller. "You wouldn't turn on me like that. You wouldn't drag strangers into our family business." "Our business," I repeated. "You turned it into my business when you put everything in my name." She tried one last weapon. "If you tell anyone, I'll make sure the whole family knows how you abandoned me," she threatened. They'll all know how selfish you are. I almost laughed. Good, I said. Because I'm done being the secret you hide behind. If you want to talk to them, we'll talk. With proof. More silence. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging her to calm down. I was calm. She was unraveling. Get used to it, I added. The power going out? That's just the first bill coming due. I ended the call before she could respond. My heart raced. My hands trembled. It felt like stepping off a cliff and realizing midair that I might actually land on my feet. This wasn't cruelty. This was accountability. My revenge wasn't screaming back. It wasn't humiliating her. It was refusing to keep lighting myself on fire to keep her warm. I knew her, though. She wouldn't accept this quietly. And I was right, because the next messages weren't just angry. They were dangerous. You're destroying me. I raised you alone, and this is how you repay me. If you don't fix this, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. I ignored them. Until one text made my stomach drop. I told your aunt you stole from me. There it was. The familiar pattern. If she couldn't control me, she'd control the story. But this time, I wasn't going to let her. Because the lights going out weren't the end. They were the signal. And the next time we faced each other, it wouldn't be in the dark. My aunt called the next morning. She didn't say hello. How could you do this to your own mother? She demanded, voice thick with righteous anger. She says you stole from her, emptied her accounts, then walked out and left her in the dark. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, letting her words burn themselves out. Have you seen any of the bills? I asked calmly. Any of the accounts? Any proof? There was a pause. Well, no. But she wouldn't lie about something like this. I will bring everything, I said. Every bill, every statement, every account. Invite whoever you want. Mom included. Silence again, longer this time. Fine, my aunt said finally. Tonight. That evening. I walked into my aunt's house with a thick folder tucked under my arm. It was heavier than paper should be. Not in weight, but in truth. My mother was already there, sitting on the couch, wrapped in a sweater like a fragile victim. Her shoulders were slumped. Her eyes were glassy. She didn't look at me. My aunt stood with her arms crossed. This has gone far enough, Maya. Your mother is humiliated. You owe her an explanation. I set the folder on the coffee table. I owe her the truth, I said. I opened it slowly. Electric bills. All in my name. Credit card statements. Mine. A personal loan application with my information, and handwriting that was unmistakably hers. My aunt picked up the first page, frowning. Then another. Then another. This says your name, she murmured. Every single one, I replied. Opened, used, and ignored by someone else. My mother shot to her feet. She did this herself. She snapped. She's trying to make me look bad. No, I said, cutting her off, my voice shaking but firm. You told me to pay my own bills while secretly putting yours in my name. That's not parenting. That's exploitation. My aunt's face drained of color as she flipped through the pages. Evelyn, she whispered. Is this true? We're family, my mother snapped. Kids help their parents. You wouldn't understand. You had a husband who stayed. So you decided your daughter's future was your emergency fund. My aunt shot back. Anger shifting, not at me but at her. My mother turned on me, eyes burning. You went to strangers. Lawyers, you think they care about you. When they're done, they'll leave. I'm your blood. And blood doesn't give you the right to bleed me dry. I replied. I reached into the folder and pulled out the final document. These are my disputes with the credit agencies, I said. And this is the fraud report. I had to list the person who opened the accounts. My aunt stared at the page. You named her. I had to, I said quietly. If I didn't, I'd carry this debt for decades, all while being told to grow up by someone who refused to. My mother lunged for the papers, but my aunt stepped between us. Enough, she said sharply. You lied to us, Evelyn. You said she abandoned you. That she stole from you. She did, my mother cried. She stole my chance at a better life. No, I said. Dad walking out did that. Your choices after that are on you. The doorbell rang. The sound made everyone freeze. I asked the landlord to stop by. I said, my heart pounding. Has been trying to reach me about the lease. The landlord stepped inside, awkward but professional. I won't stay long, he said. I just need to confirm something. He looked at me. Maya, you're officially removed from the lease as of next month. The unit will be solely under Evelyn's name. My mother's face went white. But, the landlord continued gently, if the outstanding balance isn't paid by the end of the notice period, we'll have to proceed with eviction. Eviction. The words sucked the air out of the room. You've received multiple notices, he added. We can't keep a tenant who doesn't pay and whose co-signer has legally withdrawn. My mother turned to me, fury and terror twisting together. You did this, she hissed. You're throwing me out of my own home. I swallowed hard. No. I just stopped letting you use my name as a shield. The landlord excused himself and left. The room buzzed with tension. You're going to regret this, my mother whispered. One day you'll need me, and I'll remember this. I thought of my wrecked credit, my lost sleep, the years I spent fixing messes I didn't make. I already regret not doing it sooner, I said. She stormed out. This time I didn't follow. The consequences came fast after that. Family members stopped defending her. They'd seen the proof. Heard the landlord. Understood I hadn't abandoned her. I'd escaped. My mother, on the other hand, spiraled. Her messages swung wildly between rage and pity. You humiliated me. Everyone thinks I'm a monster because of you. I did what I had to do to keep us alive. Then, when I didn't respond, you were always a mistake anyway. That was the message that finally broke something loose inside me. I blocked her number. It felt brutal. It also felt necessary. At work, I took more shifts. At school, I met with a counselor who helped me put words to what I'd lived through. This wasn't tough love, she said gently. It was abuse. Financial, emotional, psychological. I feel guilty, I admitted. Like I'm the villain. That's because you were forced to play the parent, she replied. Now that you've stopped, she's punishing you for it. The legal process moved slowly, but it moved. Accounts froze, investigations opened. My credit stopped bleeding. Then my aunt called one afternoon. They posted a notice on her door, she said quietly. Eviction. 30 days. I closed my eyes. This wasn't a dramatic revenge scene, it was quiet, messy, painful. But underneath the ache was something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Because for the first time, the court wasn't family opinion or guilt. It was truth. And truth doesn't need a judge to pass judgment. I thought I was ready. When my aunt told me the eviction notice had been posted, I imagined I'd feel victorious. Like this was the final stamp on a long, brutal chapter. But when the day actually came, it didn't feel like winning. It felt heavy. The morning of the eviction arrived gray and slow, the kind of day where the sky presses down on everything. I knew the date. I'd known it for weeks. Still, I tried to go about my routine like it was any other day. Shower, coffee. Work shirt folded neatly on the bed. I didn't plan on going anywhere near that apartment. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long moment, my chest tightening. I could have ignored it. Let it go to voicemail. Let someone else deal with it. But something in my gut told me this call mattered. I answered. Maya, my mother said. Her voice sounded different. Thinner, like the sharp edges had finally worn down. It's me. I'm using the neighbor's phone. I stayed silent. They're here, she continued. They're putting my things outside. I pictured it without trying. Movers, the landlord, maybe a sheriff. Boxes stacked on the sidewalk. Neighbors peeking through blinds, pretending not to stare. Our couch, the kitchen table, the dresser I used as a kid, all reduced to objects on a curb. I just thought, she said, forcing a bitter laugh. You might want to see what your smart decisions look like. I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. You mean the result of your choices? I asked quietly. Silence stretched between us. Are you happy now? She finally demanded. You got your revenge. The power's off, the bills are in my name. I'm losing the apartment. You win. I thought about that for a long moment. This was never about winning, I said. It was about surviving, she scoffed. You could have helped. You could have fixed it. I did help, I replied, for years, with money. with time, with my mental health. You never called that help. You called it what I owed you. Her breathing was ragged on the other end. When the lights went out for you, I continued, you still had options. You're an adult. You can work. You can ask for help. When the lights went out for me, I was a kid. And you were the one flipping the switch. She didn't answer. In the background, I heard muffled voices. Someone saying, "Ma'am, we need you to sign this. Where will you go?" I asked softly. "I don't know," she muttered. "Your aunt offered to let me stay for a while. But she made it clear she's not paying my debts. Everyone suddenly grew a backbone after your little presentation." "That's not my fault," I said. "That's what truth does." She inhaled sharply. "Why are you really calling me?" The question caught me off guard. "Because I wanted to ask," she said, her voice cracking. "Is there any part of you that still loves me?" The words hit harder than any insult she'd ever thrown. I closed my eyes. Images rushed in, scraped knees, bedtime stories, birthday cakes. Then slammed doors, red envelopes, screaming matches. "I do love you," I said quietly. "That's why this hurts. If you loved me," she sobbed, "you wouldn't let it get this far." "Loving you doesn't mean letting you destroy me," I replied. "And it doesn't erase what you did." She was quiet for a long time. "So that's it?" she finally said. "You're just done with me?" "No," I said. "I'm done being your wallet, your therapist, your shield, your scapegoat." In the background, I heard the landlord again. "Ma'am, we really need to finish up. I have to go," she whispered. "Goodbye, Maya." "Goodbye, Mom," I said. The word felt strange and final. The line went dead. I stood there for a long time, phone still in my hand, feeling hollow and oddly light at the same time. Somewhere across town, the apartment I grew up in was being emptied. Doors closing, locks changing, lights off. She once screamed at me, "Pay your own bills," I had. And for the first time in her life, she was being forced to pay hers. But even then, the story wasn't quite finished. Because what happens after revenge isn't celebration, it's reckoning. And that reckoning would come quietly. In the days after the furniture left the sidewalk, after the anger cooled, after the noise faded, that's when I finally understood something. Walking away didn't make me heartless. It made me free. And freedom, I was learning, comes with a cost. But it's one worth paying. I told myself I wouldn't be there. When my aunt said the eviction date was set, I imagined it as a distant event. Something happening far away from me. Like weather in another city. I had already moved on. Already rebuilt. Already survived. That confidence dissolved the moment my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at the screen while my chest tightened, a familiar pressure settling in. I knew who it was before I answered. I always did. "Maya," my mother said. Her voice was weaker than I'd ever heard it, stripped of its sharp edges. "It's me. I'm using a neighbor's phone." I leaned against the wall, my knees suddenly unsteady. "They're here," she continued. "They're putting my things outside. Right now." I closed my eyes. I could see it without trying. The apartment building I'd grown up in. Doors propped open, strangers carrying out furniture that once held our lives. The couch where she slept. The table where bills piled up. The dresser where I hid emergency cash she never knew about. "They're putting everything on the curb," she said, a bitter laugh breaking through her words. "Our lives look pretty small out here." "They're your things," I said quietly. "Not ours." There was a pause. Then anger surged back, desperate and raw. "Are you happy now?" she demanded. "You got what you wanted. The power's off. The bills are mine. I'm losing the apartment. You win." I took a long breath. "This was never about winning," I said. "It was about surviving." "You could have helped," she snapped. "You could have fixed this." "I did help," I replied, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. "For years. With money, with my time, with my future. You never called that help. You called it what I owed you." Her breathing came fast and uneven through the phone. "When the lights went out for you," I continued, "you still had choices. You're an adult. You can work. You can ask for help. When the lights went out for me, I was a kid, and you were the one turning them off. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. In the background, I heard voices. Someone firm but polite. Mom, we need you to sign here. Where will you go? I asked, my voice softer now. I don't know, she admitted. Your aunt said I could stay for a while. She made it clear she's not paying my debts. Everyone suddenly grew a backbone after your little presentation. That's not my doing, I said. That's what truth does. She laughed bitterly. You always liked being the smart one. The words didn't sting the way they used to. Why are you really calling me? I asked. There was a long pause. Because I needed to ask, she whispered. Is there any part of you that still loves me? The question cracked something open inside me. I thought about scraped knees and bedtime stories. About the mother she used to be before grief turned into control. I also thought about red notices, shaking hands, nights spent calculating how to save us both. I do love you, I said quietly. That's why this hurts. If you loved me, she sobbed. You wouldn't let it get this far. Loving you doesn't mean letting you destroy me, I replied. And it doesn't erase what you did. She was quiet for a long time, her breathing the only sound between us. So that's it, she finally said. You're just done with me? No, I answered. I'm done being your wallet, your therapist, your shield, your scapegoat. Another voice cut in on her end. Mom, we really need to finish up. I have to go, she whispered, defeated. Goodbye. Maya, goodbye, Mom, I said. The line went dead. I slid down the wall and sat on the floor, my phone still pressed to my ear. My chest ached, not with guilt, but with the weight of finality. Somewhere across town, the apartment I grew up in was emptying out. Doors closing. Locks changing, lights off for good. She once screamed at me. Pay your own bills, I had. And for the first time in her life she was being forced to pay hers. This wasn't cinematic revenge. There was no cheering, no victory music, no moment where everything suddenly felt right. There was just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized something important. Walking away didn't make me cruel. It didn't make me ungrateful. It made me free. And freedom, I was learning, doesn't come with applause. It comes with peace, earned the hard way. The silence after eviction was louder than any fight we ever had. No calls, no threats. No late night messages dripping with guilt and blame. Just quiet. At first, the quiet scared me. I'd spent my entire life reacting, fixing problems, calming storms, bracing for impact. Without chaos, I didn't know where to put my hands or my thoughts. I kept waiting for the next emergency, the next accusation, the next demand disguised as love. It never came. Weeks passed. Then months. And slowly, something inside me unclenched. My credit report began to change. Disputed accounts were officially removed. Fraud markers closed. The numbers weren't perfect, but they were honest. Finally mine. Every bill I paid now belonged to me. Every dollar spent came with clarity instead of dread. I moved again, this time by choice. A slightly better place, sunlight in the mornings, plants on the windowsill. I opened my first savings account without fear of it being drained overnight. Power felt different when it was quiet. Not loud, not cruel, not flashy. Just steady. One afternoon, I ran into my aunt at the grocery store. We stood awkwardly between the produce aisle and the checkout lanes, the past hovering between us. She's staying with a friend now, my aunt said carefully. She's different. I nodded. I hope she figures things out. She still says you abandoned her, my aunt added. But she doesn't say you lied anymore. That mattered more than I expected. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need updates. My healing didn't require her downfall, just distance. Still, there was one loose end. A letter arrived 6 months later, forwarded from an old address. Evelyn's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. I never meant for things to go this far. I did what I thought I had to do. You were always strong. I thought you'd land on your feet. I hope one day you understand. No apology. No accountability. Just justification wrapped in sentiment. I folded the letter and set it down. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to respond. Because understanding didn't mean excusing, and closure didn't require her permission. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote something of my own. Not to send, but to release. You taught me how to survive by watching what I never wanted to become. You taught me that love without respect is just control in disguise. You taught me that family isn't who shares your blood, it's who protects your future. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because the bill she owed me was never just money. It was childhood safety, trust, freedom from fear, and while she could never repay that debt, I had collected something else instead, my life. The final revenge wasn't eviction. It wasn't power shutoffs. It wasn't court papers or proof laid bare. It was this: she no longer had access to me, no access to my time, my finances, my emotions, my future. I stopped explaining myself to people who benefited from misunderstanding me. I stopped shrinking to keep others comfortable. I stopped mistaking endurance for love. One evening, as I paid my bills, my real ones with my real name, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. I looked older, stronger, whole. "My name is Maya," I said out loud, just to hear it. And I survived. Not because someone saved me, but because I chose myself. If Evelyn ever truly changes, I hope she finds peace. If she doesn't, that's no longer my burden to carry. I don't wish her harm. I wish her accountability. And I wish myself a future where my power is used for building, not surviving. The lights in my apartment hummed softly. On, paid, mine. That was the ending she never expected. And the beginning I earned.